The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth session of our COIS webinars. We sure appreciate everybody being a part of this. We see we've got some people from Japan and Guillermo, buenos noches from España. I hope you guys are all ready. This is going to be one of our finest programs tonight, because we have two people that have spent more time with COIS trained dentists than just about anyone else in the world as far as helping them develop their practice and make that a successful thing, which is the whole purpose of the Harbor, which is to help all of us have a successful, enjoyable, profitable practice, because that's what John wants for us all. So again, thanks for being a part of this. And now sit back and enjoy the show. Also, you'll see on your, if you look at your screen, if you're listening to this, you can email us questions, and then Sandy will handle those questions at the end of the webinar, or we'll get back to you personally on that. So welcome, Sandy and Mary Beth, and go ahead and take off for the show. We're excited.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you. We love tribe members pretty much more than anybody else in the world, and there's a really important reason why we're bringing this particular presentation to you this evening. You know, as Jeff was talking, we were chatting a bit before this actually started, and he was hearkening back to his dental school days when he, like probably all of you, were told that you had to be a really good dentist, and if you went out there and you're a good dentist, the world would beat a path to your door. And all of us know that that probably wasn't true back then, and it still isn't true. And we've called this whole program Invisible Excellence is Still Invisible, because the principle of marketing we want to focus on this evening is that if you don't tell people who you are, where you are, and what you do, they won't necessarily be able to find what you have learned and now you can do. So we know, and this is something that annoys a lot of COIS dentists, but we got to get over this, that a poor or a mediocre dentist or group of dentists with a large marketing presence will always have more opportunities, more patients, more contacts than an excellent dentist who remains invisible. You know, when my husband got out of dental school in 1970, the standard was, in most states, advertising and marketing was illegal. I mean, you could put something in announcing that your office had opened, but Lord knows you couldn't tell anybody about yourself. It was considered really unprofessional to do that. And that the idea behind that was that promoting your practice really cheapened the profession, and that if you were good enough, you really didn't need to do this. And that if you were advertising, that really meant you were in trouble. Now, the world has changed so dramatically, and we all know that corporate dentistry, insurance, all of these other messages out there have changed the landscape significantly for us. So we wanted to spend some time talking about the concept of marketing, because we know that as COIS dentists, you have developed a perspective and an excellence in both diagnostics and application of those diagnostics, but for the most part, our dentists, our COIS tribe members, are not experts in a lot of non-clinical things, one of which is marketing. Beyond that, if you're trying to go into something that is outside of your awareness and your skill set, it takes an enormous amount of time to get on top of everything that you have to do. And the third thing that holds a lot of people back is that, depending on your marketing area, promotion, advertising, marketing, development can be very expensive. If you're in New York City, Bob Soren's on tonight. He's in Manhattan. It's an extremely expensive area in which to market, so that you've got to be very, very clever about how to deal with that kind of thing. On the other hand, some of you who are in smaller media markets and smaller communities have a lot more opportunities. You have a lot fewer patients to choose from and to attract, but you have more opportunities that are more affordable to you. So here's the thing that we know. Just being clinically advanced and exceptional as a clinical dentist is not enough. You take your car into a body shop and you are hoping that that mechanic is really good at what he or she does, that they've got expertise in the area in which you need that expertise to be developed. But if you're like me, I haven't got a clue about how to evaluate that. So what do I pay attention to? I know this is nuts, but I pay attention to how organized the shop is. Are the tools neatly stored? Do they appear to have some order or structure? Am I greeted properly? Do they give me back the right car when I come to pick it up? Those things that don't have anything to do with the actual mechanics of being a mechanic are the things that tell me I have likely chosen the right place. They could hook up my carburetor to the exhaust system. I don't think they're supposed to go together. Maybe not, but to the flange, to the upper digital whatchamacallit, I wouldn't have a clue. So I began to trust the person I take my car to based on how understanding they are of me, how much time they take to listen to me, find out exactly what is wrong with my car from my perspective, show me the parts, explain things to me in language I understand, introduce problems I'm not aware of in a way that makes me feel like I'm not being taken down the river. There are all of those kinds of factors that help us to make a decision about whether we're in the right place. Dentistry is no different. The patients who come to you are clueless about how to evaluate you. So here are some things that we want to begin this whole program by emphasizing for you before you spend one dime on any marketing. Are you ready? Do you have the things in place before you even begin your marketing campaign? And here's the part that about this readiness. There are a variety of aspects and areas of your practice that have got to be pitch perfect, organized, planned, intentional, on the mark, so that when your marketing does produce a result for you, you're ready to receive it. Mary Beth and I have been in so many practices where the new patient process, oh yes, it brings in people, but the back door is open and people are leaving through the back door because the structure and the systems and the focus of the team are not ready to receive those people. So here are some of the things that we're going to ask you to pay attention to. Those people who are not the clinical parts of your practice are going to have a bigger impact, I'm going to underscore this, are going to have a bigger impact on the success of your practice, particularly in receiving people who are the result of your marketing structure. They're going to have a bigger impact on the clinical performance of dentistry. So here's the thing. You have a great dentist, you've got great clinical skills, your clinical stuff is just fabulous. You have someone at your reception at that beginning part, that foreplay of dentistry, who is not on pitch, who is not able to receive people well, who doesn't make people feel so totally welcomed. Those patients are not going to get back past your door to be in your chair. Those patients are not going to feel there's a congruence between what you're saying in your marketing and what's happening for them. Your team as a whole has to be together in this process. You're moving down this flow, and everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction. So the messages that a new or prospective patient gets in your marketing has to be the same flow and congruent with the messages of the person who's receiving them in the initial call, in the initial discussions, in the initial connections, and that has to be carried through all through your practice. Our experience is that many dentists are clueless about how patients are received, what is said to patients on the phone the first time they call, what patients are promised, how patients' questions are addressed, how their patients are prepared for your practice. So there are a number of things that we want to help you become prepared for. There is a variety of skills that you have to have in place in your practice. Those skills involve, of course, clinical skills. They involve, of course, administrative, getting your financial house in order, your organizational house in order, getting your structures in order. But most of all, they involve having your behavioral skill sets together. While that's not the topic of our program tonight, we want to help you with that as much as you can and underscore that the finest dentist with the greatest advertising campaign or marketing and promotion campaign, without everything working together inside the practice with all those skills in place, will not ultimately get the benefit of their marketing revenue as they are hoping. So if there are a number of things that we're going to make available to you upon request. One of them is a checklist of the basic skills that you and your group have to be clear and have in place. What we observe in too many COIS practices is that the dentist is extremely skilled, clinically very advanced, but the rest of the team has not risen to that same level. This is a serious problem for you. So we can help you with that checklist so that you can do a self-evaluation in that process. So we're going to make now the happy assumption that through whatever mechanism you take on board, that you're able to get your group ready for this process. And now we're going to move into the aspects of marketing we want to spend the bulk of our time on tonight. And I'm going to turn this over to Mary Beth. Her expertise in this area is just significant. So Mary Beth, I'll turn this over to you, and then we'll go through the rest of our program.
All right, terrific. I'm so happy to be with everybody tonight, and I'm going to jump right in here and start with the basics. Really, we're going to go from the basics here. What is marketing and why does it matter? By definition, marketing is the process of creating, communicating, and delivering your offerings that have value for your customers, your clients, your patients. And this would include everything involved in defining your niche in the marketplace, developing your brand, advertising your services, as well as those things that are on the fringes of what we might think of as marketing: community outreach, social marketing, networking, one-on-one relationship building, and connections.
Mary Beth, I'm going to pause you just a minute. We're getting a couple of questions from people. They're telling us that there is some static and then it's a little hard to hear you. So I'm wondering if you can speak up, and if you could figure out how to, we practice this a little bit, everybody, to try to deal with the static, but I think we've got a little bit of problem here. So Mary Beth, do you have a solution to that?
The other solution I have is to just go right directly into my computer.
All right, let's give that a try.
Okay.
Let's give that a try, because I think people, I'll talk for a few minutes while you do that. We want to make sure and we're getting enough comments. Thank you all, everybody, Matthew, James, Dan, Daniel, and Dawn, for your comments. This is very helpful, and we will make the adjustment right now, and we'll see What happens here?
You know, my biggest challenge is because I am showing you the screen that you're watching right now and all the images. I don't have control over my mouse to be able to change my audio from one thing to the other. So I'm not really sure what the answer to this is. Let's see.
Do you have a VoIP option?
I do, but I can't access it from
Okay.
from this screen. I'm going to have to go offline in order to do that.
All right, so let's try this, if you will, Mary Beth. If you can speak louder, and
All right.
I don't know that we'll be able to do necessarily anything about, I don't want to have this be a problem for us. So if you'll speak louder, and the static may or may not continue, but as Mary Beth gets started on this, everybody give me a little feedback, or those of you who mentioned this before. Let's see if this is better, and we'll continue from there, Mary Beth.
Well, I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope it is, and hope that what I'm doing, I'm holding one arm up in the air, and I'm
Do you have your tinfoil hat on?
Planet here, right? Exactly. So I'm hoping what I'm doing is going to be an adequate fix for everybody as we move forward. Do you have any feedback from folks on that?
I haven't yet, so let's just keep going. They're saying I'm
okay.
Clear. The static is minor. Amanda, thank you. It's much better. Okay, so we're going to continue and deal with what we've got.
My arm is going to get tired, but that's the sacrifice I'm going to make.
All right.
So let's move forward from the definition of marketing and talk a little bit about this phrase that you've probably heard being banted around, which is branding. Basically, branding is the practice of creating a name, a symbol, design, all of those things that come together to identify and differentiate your service from those of your competitors. To go further, it's the voice with which your external messages are filtered. Your brand is your promise to your customer, and it tells them what they can expect from your products, your services, what you have to offer. It differentiates your offering from that of your competitors. So if we take an analogy from, say, the restaurant business, not everybody can be all things to all people, nor would you want to be. What you offer is going to be very different from the guy or the gal down the street. These restaurants are a great example as well. Each one of them has a different menu. It has a different dining experience. You have a different expectation when you go to McDonald's than if you go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. So your brand is going to help you define who you are to the marketplace. Your brand should be authentically you, and it's derived from who you are, what you strive to be, and who others may perceive you to be based upon the way that you reflect yourself. So what does authentic mean? It's being true to who you are and the type of dentistry you want to practice. You're probably already pretty clear on this because as Kois followers, nobody goes to John Kois and comes out of the experience less clear about what's important to them. And because you're more clear about that, it's going to be relatively easy for you to convey that clarity to the people that work with you and to be able to be it. It is what sparks your passion. It's what gets you up every day and makes you look forward to going in and practicing dentistry. Now, what that is for you may be very different from one of your colleagues. It's at that point when you define your authenticity and your brand that you can tell your patients who you are and tell them in ways that make to them, that are relevant to them. If you speak your truth, you can build your practice on this firm foundation. And we want to caution you, don't decide to be something just because it's a good thing to be, or there's potential in the marketplace for whatever that is. It really is, it needs to be something that represents you, not what you aren't. So at the point at which you have clarity about that, you've defined it, you've articulated that clearly to your staff, and you're living it and breathing it every day, that's the point at which you can begin to develop your positioning statement. This is when you shout it from the mountaintops. This is who I am. I can help you. And shout it in terms that your consumers and your customers and your patients, your potential patients, can understand. For example, I'd like to show you some examples of positioning statements that some dentists are using, and we're not suggesting any of these for any of you tonight, but they are touchstones. They're examples of what potential patients, people outside of dentistry, can connect to and come to learn about what you promise to deliver. Restoring health and wellness through dentistry. Elegant solutions for delicate problems. Making a trip to the dentist fun. Now, if you're a serious surgeon, you're likely not going to have that positioning statement. It may be something more along the lines of solving complex dental problems. And we're not confused about what get in, get out, get on with life means. They're committed to making sure that people get in, they take care of them quickly, and they get them on their way. Those are the promises that come along with positioning statements.
One of the things that many of the practices we've worked with struggle with is getting clear in their own minds about what their purpose is, and they spend a lot of time working with dictionaries and thesaurus and trying to get, you know, beautiful sounding kinds of things together. And it's sort of interesting because within a very short time, we can, when we walk into a practice, we get what you're about. We can see it. And I think it's because it's who you are. You just assume that that's what everybody else is, but it isn't. And the distinctions we see between one practice and another are quite significant for us. So one of the other resources we have to make available for you, and we'll give you information about how to get this resource if you're interested in it, is an article we've written about purpose. What is the purpose of your practice aside from making money? What is the purpose of your practice? The array of purposes is quite broad. Many of you will remember several years ago at the symposium when Michael Soloway did a presentation, and he presented to you his sense of his purpose and how he came to embrace it, to recognize it. Architect. He's a dental architect. It's quite significant for him. Each one of you has it, and this article may help you get through what you assume everybody else is doing or knows about you, to how you can take that purpose and make it part of what you put out there for people.
And that way that positioning statement amplifies for the marketplace what you're about and what your promises are to your patients. So let's talk a little bit about some marketing basics. Essential information I believe every one of you should know, and it really is a combination of 5 key components. And they're reach, frequency, consistency, variety, and top-of-the-mind awareness. So we're going to go through each one of these in more detail to add some meat to it. Reach simply means reaching out to your target market by crafting your message specifically to the group or groups you wish to attract. You want to identify who those folks are. Then, once you've identified them, you define yourself as narrowly as possible to that group, understanding that you're going to pick up peripheral business on either side of that. So when you reach out to the marketplace, think of it this way. It's like fish bait. If you use the right kind of bait, you're going to attract the right kind of patient that you want to serve. When you want goldfish, you use goldfish food. If you want sharks, you chum the water. Big difference between the two. And that's what REACH is about, targeting those specific audiences and identifying them in the marketplace.
So one of the things that we want to pay attention to is what you're striving to achieve. What is this dog going after? This dog is not going after broccoli, although some dogs like broccoli. This dog is going after a bone. The dog is attracted to the bone. And one of the things that I want to put in here right now, because Bob Soren has asked a question which I'm going to address at the end. Bob, thank you for that question. Part of what we want to make sure that you remember, and I'm going to underscore here, is that this thing that Mary Beth suggested about authenticity and being authentic in your message is really, really important. There might be a really, you might go to visit another dentist, or you hear Jeff Bynum talk, or you hear Jeff Gray talk, or you listen to Betsy or Michael or Dan Clater or John Durango or any of these people who tend to be out there in our tribe, and they talk about what their practice is about, and it sounds so wonderful to you. It's so compelling, and you want to borrow a little bit of that. And that's fine to be an inspiration for you, but you cannot adopt somebody else's persona. It's fine if you say, boy, that's really good. That's a good way of saying that, and that is in fact me. That's what I'm going for. That's what I'm all about here. But you cannot become somebody else because you think it's a good idea. You have to be you. And there are many dentists out there, many of you perhaps listening to us right now, who went back after your first 5 or 6, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 courses, and you tried to be John Coyce in your practice. There's not a one of us, there's not a one of you who can do that. First of all, John's unique on so many levels, but you can't be John any more than you can be Bole. You can't be John any more than somebody else could be you. So this authenticity is really, really essential. So you define your practice in the way that represents you. And I think a lot of people are worried that if they don't define their practice in the most elegant of ways, people will think less of them, or they won't really be an authentic Coyce practice. And that's not true. On the other hand, if you love working with cradle to grave people, and within that context of working with young people to geriatrics, you have figured out how to apply Coyce principles so that you're confident that your clinical skills are sound, that you're using diagnostic opinion to guide your thinking, that you're applying all of the always principles when you're actually performing your dentistry, and you're doing it within the context of what's appropriate for each of the ages and stages you're working in. That's fabulous. On the other hand, if you've chosen to limit your practice to a smaller array of services, prosthodontics, removables, implant dentistry, for more affluent seniors or for less affluent seniors, whatever it is, that's really important for you to own. Don't do it because you think it's a good idea. Do it because it's your idea. It's what's going to get you out of bed in the morning and make you darned excited about going to work. It's really important that you figure out your target market and the service mix you want to provide. And the article that we will send you, and we'll give you that information again at the end of the conversation, I think will help you hone that. It will be a good way to get you started.
And as you wade into the waters of marketing, we would like for you to keep three really, really important things in mind. The first one is focus on quality of life issues as you send your messages out into the marketplace to your potential patients, things they can connect with. Just as Dr. Coyce emphasizes those quality of life issues, so too must your external messages. Those quality of life issues are what move people from inaction to action. One day they might be perfectly fine, but something happens to create a problem in their life and they're moved to action. But it's not because they wake up and say, you know, I need an implant today. It's not about the hardware for them. It's about what's not working in their life. So the second is focus on the problem and offer the solution. You're the right people to help them with that problem. And then, of course, the third thing is staying relevant. If you can articulate how you can uniquely help solve the problem they believe they have, then you've got a chance at getting them as a patient. Here are some examples of those types of appeals. Love coffee but hate the stains. Want to eat corn again? Embarrassed by your smile. Are your headaches a mystery? Tired of being tired? Sleep apnea solutions. So the more you focus on the quality of life issues, serve up the problem so they can think to themselves, you know, I've got that problem. Yeah, I've been wondering about that. You can help move patients to action.
Mary Beth, I'm going to remind you to keep speaking loudly at the request of Daniel.
All right. Sorry, Daniel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. I'm hoping that's helpful. Just remember that you must connect with those things that are not the hardware solution for what you offer, but those things that get in the way of people's lives. Most of the things that influence you are very different than those things that influence your patients. It's not implants, it's missing teeth. Secondly, frequency. Frequency has to do with sending messages and sending them often. What you want to do is claim your territory and you want to dominate it. Consumers very rarely experience one exposure to your message and then remember your name and what you do. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen for us like that. It requires a number of impressions, multiple impressions, for people to connect with who you are and what you offer. It is just the nature of the way that we think, and it's also significantly true when they're not in the market at one moment, and then they decide they need what you have to offer at another moment. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So just like you continue to go to Coyce courses, gain mastery, gain experience, each impression builds on the last one, that's exactly what you're doing when you're sending those frequent messages out into the marketplace. You're raising the odds that this person is going to remember you. But we want to caution you, don't expect for things to happen right away. Don't expect that you can just put an initial push out there and see how it goes. This is more like an annuity. You're putting money in, and finally it's going to pay off for you down the road. The biggest mistake is to stop in midstream. Establish a plan, follow the plan, be consistent with the plan, and start building that bank along the way. That's the frequency piece. Consistency is when all of your messages speak in one voice. Everything comes together, one logo, one font style, one color palette, one positioning statement, a consistent approach and style to the messaging that you're sending out there. No one is confused when they see or experience a target ad. Even before you see this iconic symbol, you know it's a target ad. There's a lot of companies out there who work very hard on establishing that consistent messaging in the marketplace. Focus on identifying your specialty, your niche, your brand, and tie all of those messages together and the visuals and the content that are similar. Here's an example of that. This is one practice, but very different messages. Love coffee, hate the stains, we can help. Make over your smile. The sky's the limit. Snore less, live more. They're appealing to different target markets. But what's important is everything speaks in one voice. Everything builds on the other. It's the colors, the font styles, the design style. Everything works in concert to help emphasize and support the consistency, the frequency, and reaching that target audience. The fourth element is variety. And really, this, I think, is an area where you can get really, really creative. This is sending your message out through a number of different avenues. And just like you become aware of things in different ways, so too do your patients. You can identify unique opportunities in your community to raise awareness, and you can do it in really unique ways, creative ways. You can exercise a variety of modes in conveying your message, and this will help, again, reinforce the reach and the frequency of your marketing campaign. For instance, you could begin by focusing on education and goodwill marketing. So if you have a passion for service, a great way to express that is to hold a free dentistry day. And at the same time, you're going to gain valuable exposure at the same time. You can't put a price on the goodwill that you'll gain from having and holding a free dentistry day, and it will follow you for years down the road. Yeah, those are the folks that did that free day. I remember them. It will help really build the goodwill for your practice in the community. You can also become the go-to expert by establishing yourself with a radio talk show program. You could contact the paper or the television stations and say, hey, you've got anything that comes across the AP wire or anything trending with regard to dental health, I'm your person. I'm your person to call for a local interview.
Mary Beth, I'm just going to jump in here because we have a question from someone that's right in this place, and I've just responded to it on the question board, but I just want to suggest, the question was, is it a good idea to try to do some advertorials in local magazines and that kind of stuff? And I said, I think this is spot on. And this leads into what you're talking about in terms of becoming the go-to expert in your community. But don't assume that you have to necessarily pay for an ad. It may be that either in flyers in gated communities or other kinds of newspapers or even local magazines. It may be that they're looking for worthy copy that doesn't necessarily promote your practice, but your name builds recognition in doing that. So I wanted to just raise that now when you're talking about exactly that, because the question just came across the question board.
Yes, absolutely. If there is a subject near and dear to your heart, then you could submit an article to the paper or to other publications. Even if your target audience is an affluent, older market, and there is a retirement community, a relatively large one, that has a print publication, offer to put the article in there. Offer to provide that kind of service to their community. And it may or may not be that in your local market, television, radio, billboard presence is cost effective for you, but it certainly is something you should look into down the road after you start to dip your toe into the water. Some relatively inexpensive ways that you might be able to get out there and start establishing awareness. Sponsor a sports team. Sandy, Doug, Sandy's husband, he targeted. Tell him about the sports team that you sponsored.
Doug sponsors a senior citizen softball team, and it's called the Brooksville Choppers. And the logo is an old guy with a beard and a mustache, and he's on a chopper motorcycle, and it's a little play on words, but it's sort of cool. And I mean, I cannot tell you how many. We live in a retirement area, in a senior area, and we get tons of patients because they say, oh, we went to the softball game and we saw the shirts that you got for the Brooksville Choppers, so we thought we'd come here. I mean, it costs us, what, $50 for the shirts, and we've gotten 15 or 20 patients out of it. I mean, come on. It's great. Brooksville Choppers.
So that's a great example of really getting creative in your local market. Local events, causes, health fairs, lunch and learns that you might be able to sponsor. Anytime there is an event of this kind, launch a press release. Let people know your involvement. Let them know what you're doing. A personal letter you might send out to newcomers into the area. And I'm finally going to jump down to one of the most important things, and that's your team. They could by far become your best practice ambassadors. And that's when they know how to represent you, and they've developed the proper communication skills to do it effectively, do it authentically. Above all, be really conservative and calculated at first. We really want to urge you to remember that it's better to do a few things really well than to spread yourself too thin. It's really a great way to kind of, like I said, dip your toe in the water and kind of establish yourself out there. And the fifth piece is really what combines and brings everything together. Top of the mind awareness, or top of the mind presence. Patients connect when they're likely to need you. And here's the thing. It's difficult to know or to plan for your messages to connect with people at the very moment they decide they need a service that you offer. It might be that they have heard your ad, they've driven by your practice, they've read something on a regular basis, and they haven't given it a second thought. But there's the moment that we talked about where they move from inaction to action. And that's the point at which you're reached to your target market, the frequency with which you've been sending out your messages, the consistency of the messages, and the variety in which you've reached out to the community. It's all going to come together and culminate with this person saying, hey, wait a minute, I know them. They're familiar to me. They're known for fill in the blank. They're known for sleep dentistry. They're known for implants. They're known for exquisite cosmetic care. Oh, that's the guy that gives second opinions. Whatever it is, they will remember it, and they will most likely seek you out. So marketing is cumulative. It isn't something you can stop and start. You build on the reserve of your name recognition, your reputation, your familiarity in the marketplace, and continue to move forward with that. Don't think that initially you can put something out there and people are going to immediately flood your phone lines. It doesn't work that way. It works slow, steady, cumulatively over time. And not everybody is going to be ready to take action for what you're offering when you offer it. It's familiar to them because the marketing foundation you previously laid. Simple as that. So once you've laid this foundation and someone says, I need fill in the blank, and your practice comes in to mind. Once you've laid that foundation, what are the factors that influence patients to make a decision about choosing your practice as opposed to another practice they might be familiar with? Well, it used to be that consumers thought the only way that they could find a quality dentist was through calling or looking online at 1-800-DENTIST. Well, they don't need that anymore. That's not the way people get information nowadays. They don't need that kind of referral to find a dentist. I believe there are 4 influential factors that help people decide who to contact. And they're quite simply word of mouth, your website, online reviews, and your staff. So if we take these piece by piece, let's talk about word of mouth. When you decide you need something, you need your lawnmower fixed, you're going to get a used car for your daughter, you want to find someone to give your son piano lessons, you're looking to remodel your home, chances are you're going to go ask friends, family members, coworkers. You might even ask acquaintances in some cases who they might recommend. People ask around, and they ask around in a variety of ways. And one thing I can tell you is that as the older we get, the older people get, the more they talk to their friends about 2 things. One is their doctor appointments, and the second is what they're going to have at their next meal. And I joke about this, but, you know, somewhere in the intersection between those 2 things is dentistry. And
so,
I miss this because, yeah, Sandy,
so
you have the...
So a patient comes into my husband's practice, and he tells us this story. He's in Home Depot in the plumbing aisle. Now, this is a patient on whom Doug has done implants to secure his denture. He's in the plumbing aisle, and he and this stranger, man he'd never met before in his life, are looking for some kind of a widget part in the plumbing aisle. And they get to chatting about things. And during this process, the stranger's dentures are clacking. And the stranger says to our patient, "Man, these damn dentures, they're driving me crazy." And our patient turned around to him and said, "Look," and he popped the denture off his implants and he showed it to this guy in the aisle. He says, mine don't move around anymore. Dr. Roth put these implants in me. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. It changed my life. Here's his number. So, you know, you can never tell where people are going to have a chat with others about their dentistry. And there's no question, as people get older, they talk about their bursitis and their last surgery, and they talk about their denture. So this word of mouth thing is something it went away for a while. It's coming back now, and it's particularly coming back with the older patient base.
Yes, it certainly is, and also with the younger patient base, but in a different way.
And louder, Mary Beth. Keep your voice up if you can.
Okay.
Okay.
I just read a statistic. 90% of consumers trust peer recommendations. 90%. That's an amazing figure. And they use a number of other things to connect with people and ask them their opinion. One is social media. Your patients are going to tell friends who you are, so you better be it, because otherwise those people they refer aren't going to trust you. Here's an example of a recent post I discovered, and these come across my social media, my Facebook pages, probably on a weekly basis, I'd say. But this one in particular, I thought was really, really a telling example. This was on a site on Facebook called Gainesville Word of Mouth. You may have a word of mouth for your particular town. And Melinda says, quality, reasonable price dentist in Gainesville for major work? Thanks. Now, I don't know what major work means to her. I don't think any of these other people who responded know what major work means. But it's interesting, the responses here. Of course, the first one is, no such thing, I'm afraid. And Chris typed full. But the point is, you have control internally in asking for patient referrals, asking your patients and teaching your patients how you want to be represented in the community so they can go out and be exceptional ambassadors for you, just like Chris is for her dentist. It is essential that even though you may not have a presence on Facebook or Twitter, you do. You just don't know it. And it's in these ways that people are communicating what you're about.
Mary Beth, I want to pop in here and give you all a simple little thing that Mary Beth and I work with all of our clients on about all of this. We have to teach patients how to represent us. And the simplest way is the easiest way. The next time a patient is in your practice and gives anyone a compliment, thank you so much. This is such a pleasant place to be. It's a simple little compliment. And we hear these kinds of things happening in practices all the time. And sadly, what people will, the staff members will do, will just blow it off. Oh, thanks. Turn that into a teach how to refer to us. You can say to the patient, I'm so glad you noticed that. You know, we worked really, really hard to make that happen, and we're so glad when people tell us we've achieved that as a very important goal. I hope that's one of the things you'll tell people if you have the opportunity to speak about our practice. The dentist was so gentle. I understood everything she had to say. You know, it's really important for us that patients understand what we're saying and communicate to them. It's really important that we are as gentle as possible. Please tell other people about that, because I think other people are looking for that too. It's a very simple thing, but it returns huge dividends for you.
Yes, absolutely. And see what's inside. They can get a sense of who you are and what you're about and whether they want to commit to walking through the front door. And the more you focus on the right things on your website, the higher the percentage that they're going to pick up the phone and call you. The two pages that get the most traffic on a dentist's website are the page about the dentist and the smile gallery. What you say about yourself and your credentials may be very different from what your patient is looking for. You want to reflect your uniqueness throughout your website. You want it to be easy to navigate, especially if your target market is an older one. Speak to your market in language they can understand. And make sure you include quality photos, quality video, the quality of the level of dentistry that you perform. You can't just have I know a guy come in and shoot some pics for you. It really has to be exceptional quality, because that's what they're going to gauge your level of expertise on. And when you speak to your market on your website, remember to keep in mind quality of life terms. It's not about the implants. It's about replacing missing teeth. And smile galleries. There's a reason why there's a build-up before the Olympics on television, not only because they want to sell ads. That's different, but people love the backstory of the athletes. They love stories. They love hearing about all of that. And your patients can connect with other people who have similar issues, similar problems. They can connect with them and say, that's what I have. I want what she got. And testimonials, both written and video. The more you have a site that is rich in stories, testimonials from people, remember, 90% of consumers trust peer recommendations, the more likely they're going to feel more confident that you're the right choice. Reviews, Yelp, Google+, there's a number of review sites, and if you're in a larger market, chances are having a presence on a review site is more important than a small market. I'm not going to go into great detail, but you can see just from this one that the quality of the reviews is significantly important, and the number of the reviews is important. And if you do need to establish a presence with a review site, there is a real strategic way of encouraging your patients to go on and post positive reviews on your behalf, and we'd be happy to share those with you. And then finally, your staff. They are the very first conversation that your patient has when they call your practice, and it is critical. There's no mistake that when people call your practice, they hope you're going to be the right one. They're expecting that everything they've learned about you or heard about you is going to be confirmed by the person who answers the phone. It's sort of like dental speed dating. The person has to be welcoming, engaging, totally focused on the call with the individual, helping connect with those quality of life issues that are getting in the way. And they must be congruent with everything they've heard and learned about you out in the community. Your staff is the piece that makes all of your marketing efforts fit. Without having highly gifted communicators on your team, all your marketing efforts can easily be undone. So it's essential that... Go ahead, Sandy.
Go ahead, Mary. Yeah, well, I was going to say, so this is where it's really important for you to listen and know how your staff is answering the telephone. I know we're coming right up on the hour, but we had planned a little extra time for questions, so we're going to finish what we have to present, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So you're welcome to stay as long as you're comfortable doing it. So listen to this. Somebody calls your practice, and the person who answers the phone is so busy, so occupied, or so flat in affect that they answer the phone and they say, Dr. Fill-in-the-Blank's office, my name is Jane, I can help you, blah, which is the gimmick of the decade here. I don't think that that's a very helpful way of responding to the telephone. The person after answering the telephone has got to have in their brain, her brain, his brain, that this is a brand new patient who's knocking on our door. We have to open that door and be happy to see them. The patient calls up. I answer the phone. I say, good afternoon, this is Dr. Roth's office. Sandy speaking. How can I help you? And I mean it. How can I help you? The person says, well, my name is Mr. Smith, and I want to make an appointment. I've got a bit of a problem here. I have to respond to what this person said. So I have got to be able to be a presence of mind that this is where scripting does not work. I have to have the presence of mind that I say to that person, well, I'm sorry to hear you're having a problem, but I'm very glad you called us. Tell me about it so I can know how we can help you. And it's that spirit that the telephone is answered, that this really, really key opportunity is never lost for our being way too busy or too distracted, or the damn phone rang so many times I couldn't get anything done. These patients are our business at this point. So, Mary Beth, you're going to talk about some important considerations as people start their marketing plan. We're going to move through this, and we're going to get to some of your questions.
Yes, as you start, get someone to help you lay out a strategy. Don't think that you can do it on your own. It is a big task, and you really weren't trained to do this. It's just like your clinical expertise, and you've worked so hard to put it into practice through your efforts at the COIS Center. You should rely on others who have expertise in understanding consumer behavior and marketing to support you. A good marketing coach. They're going to help you define your positioning statement. They're going to help review your assets, see what you have to work with right now. Determine your target market. Define your potential avenues for messaging that market. Help you implement your campaign, and most importantly, evaluate your efforts and make course corrections if necessary down the road. At the same time, you must have someone on your staff who can help you coordinate your marketing so that you can continue to do what you do best, and that's exquisite dentistry. And the final piece is converting those consumers to patients. This is an area that you have complete control over. No coming in the front door, going out the back door stuff. Before you even spend a dime on marketing, look at that checklist, work on your team, develop your skills, look at those systems and see if everything is ready in the launch position to take on all of these new patients that you've worked so hard to attract. Sandy, final comments on that?
Yeah, we're going to, one of the things that you'll hear is that the difference that Mary Beth brings to this is a really big insight into how you implement and create all of these strategies and really use them to your best advantage. The focus that we have together, however, is on how you bring all of this together and make sure that you've got the right things in place. We're going to go back to this time and time again. The people have got to be in place. The systems have got to be in place. The skill sets have got to be there. And as we develop a few more webinars with Jeff, we're going to be taking ourselves and all of you who'd like to come through this journey with us through those different kinds of aspects as we try to give you as many of the tools as we possibly can to help you be as successful as possible. So let me go to a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to let you know that Mike Palmer let me know that all of you know about the informed consent materials that are available on the website. Mike is telling me that the curriculum committee, along with the editorial board, and I am a member of the editorial board as well, are rewriting all of these, so those could be actually used for newspaper articles or articles that you would put into a newsletter for a housing area or something like that. So this is really, really another great tool that the COIS Center is making available to you. So I wanted to make sure that I let you know about that. The other thing that Mike said I didn't have to address tonight, but I think is a really good thing to talk about, is that all of you know about these the top dentists it's typically major metropolitan areas. There are a number of members of the COIS family who are in that that very esteemed group of top dentists in Atlanta and Phoenix and Seattle and Los Angeles and wherever you are. That's never a bad thing. It's insufficient because it gives you stature primarily actually among your peers, but if you don't take advantage of that, if you don't reference that, if you don't have those magazines framed in your reception area or something like that, it won't work for you. It's never a bad thing. And those of you who have been able to successfully move to that level of recognition in your community, I say congratulations to you. Congratulations. Bravo for you. And I hope that you will be able to use a lot of that information and that stature to help build on things. I'm going to try to get through the questions that now there are a lot of them coming in that I haven't read because I'm talking right now, but I want to address something that one particular person raised that may not apply to all of you, but for those of you with whom it does, and I'm seeing a second one that's very similar to this. Being a dentist in a group practice or an associate within a practice is more daunting than being a single individual solo practitioner or the owner of the practice with other people who work for you. So this is what's really important. And we work with groups, but it's more difficult because sometimes you have people at different levels of accomplishment. Sometimes you can have a practice with 3 or 4 owners, one of whom is on his way out, one of whom is on her way in, some people who are established in the middle, some people are interested in learning and growing and doing things, and other people are just really happy where they are. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time with in that organization is getting those partners together to discuss how the practice is going to be positioned. And I think what the practice has to be positioned around, and this fits with another question about being in a very, very competitive market. In Tampa, for example, you're not simply putting messages out about yourself, but your messages have to reflect who yourself is. The messages that you have to put out there are the messages that describe how you're going to fix the quality of life that your potential patients want to have fixed. This is something that's really important for us to understand. Most patients do not think to call you until something in their sphere of life, their quality of life issue, has gone awry. They have pain, something doesn't work very well, they don't like the way things look, they get worried about the long-term health of their mouth or their life, they want to get things settled, stable. Those are all not about technical things you do. That's about how the patient wants to leave your practice. They want to leave better than they came in. And it's very interesting. Get in, get fixed, go on. That's not unlike the way most patients approach dentistry. I know we have this thing about we want them to have relationships with us and all of that, but the truth is people are so busy in their lives, they want you to fix them and go away. And I find this is so congruent with what we do at the Coy Center, because what do? We manage risk. We pay attention to diagnostic opinion variables, the 4 food groups, and that helps us to manage risk in a way that is predictable, gives people solutions that are going to last a long time, that are going to allow them to go away with minimal fear that they're going to have to keep coming back. So this is a really significant issue. Now, the groups, the associates, if you're an associate in the practice, I'm sorry, you're not in charge. You're in charge of how you approach your clinical delivery of care, but you're not in charge of the message of the purpose of the practice. That belongs rightfully with the owners. If you're in a group setting, it's very different if it's multi-dimensional, if you've got multi-specialties as opposed to several general dentists working together. But that partnership or that group has to be clear in their own minds about how they're going to express themselves, how they're going to represent what their practice is, and how they help people. Those are very, very important. Dan was asking a question about whether, what if everybody's position or purpose statement is so similar that there isn't enough of a distinction. I think there's always a distinction. I don't find anybody without something that is just unique about them, that you can talk about, that you can represent. These are the issues. And it doesn't mean that you put all of that out in your ad. Listen, when you get this thing about purpose that we're happy to send you, one of the things we're going to put in there is some information about how your staff represents you. Here's an example. A patient calls on the telephone and says, "I'm coming for a second opinion." Now, if I hear that on the phone, one of the things I know is that something about that other practice wasn't right. This patient is aching, is dying for us to be the one. Are we the right one for them? So when they call for it, and then than you got before. That's tell me what you didn't like about the other folks. So now the patient says, "Well, they tried to sell me this," or "It was so complicated I couldn't understand it." Now listen, if I know my dentist well, I know my dentist is not going to sell something that's not appropriate. I know my dentist talks in terms, and as a team we communicate with patients in a way that they can understand exactly what we're saying, because we talk in language that's very patient friendly. I can say right then and there, "Oh boy, have you called the right place." One of the things, Mrs. Jones, I can promise you, and you'll let me know if I let you down on this, because I don't think I will. One of the things I can promise you is that you will not leave here confused about what the doctor is recommending, why she's recommending it, and how those recommendations matter to you in terms of the things that matter to you. I'm so glad you called. Let's get a little bit more sense of what you are looking at in terms of your dentistry, where you'd like to go with it, so I can make the right appointment for you. What more can you tell me? That sense of the uniqueness of who you are is something your staff has to understand in ways so that they can constantly represent you. This is the congruency thing that Mary Beth was talking about all along. Very, very important. Now, let's say you have a group. Somebody calls up and they say whatever it is they say, and I know that we have Dr. A who's not particularly good in that area, but Dr. C, boy, she is amazing. I'm able to say, Mrs. Jones, I think you found exactly the right place. I want to tell you about Dr. C. She's really so gifted in that area. I'd like to make an appointment for you to see her, because I think that problem you've had before is not one you'll experience with her. But we'll make a special effort to make sure that that's happened. Your staff has got to be excited and enthusiastic about you and know you well enough to be able to speak about you in what we call retail or pedestrian language. I'm going to take 1 second and read some of these other questions. Okay. This is a great question, Tracy. How do you, quote, screen new patients to fit into your practice before investing a lot of time in the new patient experience? This is such a great question. Here's what I think we want to do. We want to create an opportunity for a patient to screen themselves in rather than for us to screen them out. So here's an example. Patient calls on the telephone, and the patient says whatever it is they're going to say. I have to be excited, welcoming, enthusiastic, all of those things we've talked about before. But I want to essentially learn their story. I've talked about this at the symposium a couple of years ago, where this issue of talking with patient on the phone is really the opportunity to get the first olive out of the jar. And the image I'm going to paint for you is that, you know how martini olives, I think martini olives, come in these tall bottles, and these olives are all stuffed in there, and there's a bunch of liquid in there. And if you take off the lid and you turn the olive jar upside down, the liquid will come out, but the olives stay in. We want this first telephone call to take the first olive out of the jar, because if you take that first olive out of the jar, the rest of them come tumbling out. So we want, it's sort of like breaking the ice. We want to have one thing that happens. So now I want to learn as much about this patient. I am not going to ask them their Social Security number. I'm not going to ask them their insurance information. I may not ask them their address at first. I want to know their name. I'm going to say, I'd love to help you with that. Now I want to learn a little bit about you so I can figure out how to make the right appointment for you. So Mrs. Jones, tell me what you'd like for the doctor to pay attention to, what you'd like some help with. And I'm going to listen to their story. Based on what I hear, I'm then going to be able to say, you know, Mrs. Jones, I think you have a perfectly good sense of what you're looking for, and I know the doctor is going to be very excited to help you with that. And now I know this patient has opted in because I've listened to their story. But if this patient is not the patient that I think is going to fit with my dentist, I'm going to say to that patient, you know, I really understand that that's important to you, and I'm a little concerned that the way I know the doctor will want to help you may not fit exactly with what you've just told me. So let me tell you what I think we can offer you and see if that's something you could feel would be a good thing for you. The first thing we want to do, and this is the way I talk about what Kois dentistry is about, the first thing we want to do is to learn as much as we can about what made you call. And you started to tell me that today, which is great. The job of our dentist is try to figure out what's making that happen. Because if we don't know what makes that happen, we can't fix it in the right way. So that's where Dr. Tombaso always begins. What's making that happen for you? Because if she understands that, then she knows as a clinician, as a dentist, she can control those things so that it doesn't happen to you again. And that way she can also give you any options that are reasonable and a really good dental idea for you. And if you're happy to allow her to do that properly for you, we would love to have you come to our practice, and I'd be happy to make an appointment for you. But if they want to just come in and get, no, I don't want to do that, I don't want an exam. This is rare, by the way, that they say this. I don't want an exam, I don't want to meet the doctor, I want somebody to just take me through a hygiene car wash. I can tell you, if I know my dentist, if I know Tracy, my dentist, I'm not going to waste her time with that. So I have to be empowered to be able to say to this patient, you know, Mrs. Jones, I'm worried that we don't want to waste your time. And if allowing the dentist to see you first is not something that works for you, then I think it would be a good idea for you to think about whether you are open for her to see you or whether perhaps maybe you've not called the right practice. You'll get to that right place, but you're not going to get it if that first olive isn't out of the jar on the telephone call, and that is not developed before the patient ever gets into your chair. Part of what I say to team members all the time is your first job is to protect your dentist. You want to protect your dentist from people who won't pay you. You want to protect your dentist from people who have an ulterior motive. You want to protect your dentist from wasting his or her time on someone who is not interested in what you're offering in your practice. The example I give, and this is something we have to really work with team members on. If somebody calls your practice and says, hello, my name is Jane, and I'd like to buy 4 tires for my 1999 Toyota Corolla. What would Jane say? Jane would say, you know, I think you dialed the wrong number. But many of our team members are too timid to do that, to say to a patient, you know, I'm not sure you've gotten the right place here. So, but if your team members, the people who are representing you, don't have the courage, the skills, or permission to have that conversation on the phone, that is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Jenny is asking how we can figure out or hear what the team is saying without picking up the phone. Mary Beth will be able to give you some resources for services that will help you to, everybody needs to know we're doing this because we don't like stealth secret stuff. Record those conversations so that then we can listen to them and then have the staff listen to them, self-critique, and then we can get together with you and do an evaluation of what's happening. There are resources out there, so we're certainly happy to help you with that. Let's see, I think there were a couple of more. I want to go back to something Bob Soren asked really at the beginning, and I said I would go to his first. And Bob, I have lost your question. It's been a while ago, so I think I'm going to have to apologize, Bob. The question's not appearing on my screen anymore. Let me see if there are any more questions here. All right. Okay, there's very similar. Is there a particular book we'd recommend on marketing? Mary Beth, do you have a particular book on that? Is there a resource you think would be a good idea for anyone?
Oh goodness, there are so many out there that are potential good ones. I can put a list together and send that along with the other queries that we get from folks, and we'll want to make sure, Sandy, to let everyone know how to connect with us and to get some of these resources that we've referenced throughout the course of the webinar too. And I'll add that to the list.
Okay, Preston, Mary Beth is going to add that to the list. So let me give you very quickly information about how to follow up with us, get some of the resources we have to offer. Our website is www.prosynergy, PROSYNERGY.com. Mary Beth is Mary Beth, all one word, at prosynergy.com, and I am Sandy at prosynergy.com. The telephone number to reach us is 1-800-848-8326. 848-8326. There are a number of things we've mentioned tonight. There may be other things. I've not been able to get to all of these questions. I love Marilyn's. I'm going to tell you Marilyn's question. A lot of marketing companies want us to be silly, and that's not us. We felt ridiculous doing a lot of the things suggested. Should we have? Marilyn, your instincts are so good. If it's not you and it's silly, don't do it. Good for you. This is where, listen, you have expertise in structure, but you have expertise in who you are in yourself. That's really, really important. Good for you for saying, I'm not going to do that. I love it. What's the average monthly budget of marketing? You know, that's going to be different for all of you. If you are in a very expensive major market, if you're in New York City with Bob Soren and Michael Soloway, you're going to have to spend a lot more money in different ways. So I'm not sure that there's any one answer to that question. And you know, I can tell you that in many practices, they spend up to 10%. It's not a question. Bob has given me that. How do we do the COIS how do we taking more comprehensive approach to patient care, complete with to differentiate ourselves from laminate kings? Okay, this is a really, thank you, Bob, for repeating that for me. COIS dentistry is what you do. It's how you do it. It's not who you are. COIS dentistry is a methodology. It's a methodology that assures that you are confident, proud, and sure of the quality of the dentistry, that you've paid attention to the variables that you have to pay attention to. It is not what you talk about with your patients. You have to talk about impact of things with your patients on how it changes them. If you say to the patient, well, we have to do a deprogrammer, and let me explain this, or let me introduce to the concept of centric relation, you have lost them, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And Bob, you and I have had this conversation before. How do you take Kois principles and translate them into bite-sized pieces that patients can chew around and digest and make useful? You can say things like, we pay attention to very important details so you can have confidence that what we're doing for you is done well, it's done right, and it's done with the big picture in mind. That's how you talk about it. And while I don't think that you market yourself as a Kois practice, you behave as a Kois practice. You know, I could say we could license pro-synergy practices to, you know, several hundred or 1,000 different practices. Nobody would know what that means. Makes no sense. But what they do know is if the person answering the phone is smart, is knowledgeable, is very compassionate, makes a lot of sense. That's what they do know. So that's the part that we want to help you focus on. Those kinds of skills that your staff can get, that all of your team is rowing together on the same page. So there are a number of things we have available for you. We have a checklist of skills. Michael Palmer, you just asked about that we can make available to you. All you have to do is send an email to Mary Beth or me, Mary Beth, or Sandy at prosynergy.com. Call us. We would be so happy to respond to additional questions that you have. It's coming time for us to bring this to a close. I cannot tell you how much we've appreciated this opportunity, and Jeff, we appreciate you so much for hosting this and allowing us the opportunity to do this, and we look forward to many other opportunities to bring other ideas to your plate. Jeff, final comments from you? I think Jeff is coming back.
Let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. All right, I think that's the close of the night. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and we will see you again soon, I hope. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.